Check 1, 2.
All right, everyone, if I can get you seated. The meeting is now live. So, ngā mihi nui ki koutou katoa, nō mai haere mai ki tēnā hui. Welcome to the meeting. I'll begin by calling for any apologies. Do not appear to be any here. Conflicts of interest. Anyone got any conflicts to declare? None advised. Thank you, Chief Executive. Matters under investigation. David, any comments there? I think we currently don't have any.
No, Mr. Chair. There are a couple for the October meeting, but nothing specific for today.
Thank you, David. We can move on to pages 6 to 13, which are the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee held last month on the 5th of August. Can I have someone move in that direction? Councillor Epiha and Mayor Broughton. Any discussion or amendments to those minutes from that? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favour? Against and carried. Thank you. Audit and Risk Subcommittee Chair, that would be me. Just a couple of things we'll touch on. We attended via remotely the Orion AGM. And we've got a presentation next month by our director, John Austin, and possibly others, David.
Yes,
Definitely others. It was, I felt, a particularly good presentation from them. So looking forward, I won't go into the details of that today because obviously that will preempt their presentation. We've also had, again, with a lull of 2 months, our meeting with Steve Graves and Dave Wilson from SciComm. And I guess the take out of that was the continued strong performance, even in difficult circumstances. And I felt a conversation with Steve Grave yesterday actually said that the feel of those meetings, Sam in particular, is far more relaxed and less stilted. And I think, yeah, we've moved into a good space where we have good, honest conversations with each other too. And I think that's a positive. Obviously, we've approved the signing of the Three Waters Tranche 1 as well as a council. And I imagine that this subcommittee will have a number of inputs into the next stages of that as well, and recommendations, certainly going forward with regard to the long-term plan. Included in that, of course, moving to that are the financial projections for LTP, and core amongst that, I guess, is our consideration of the impact of COVID, both nationally and internationally, and how that will affect our conversations. Just sort of reflecting on that, I sort of think I guess the greatest risk with the COVID situation for all of us is perhaps apathy, or we look at impacts of perhaps things going wrong at our borders, but the greatest risk is actually the human interface, and chief amongst that is our own reactions to it, I guess. And it's so easy to think that we live in a COVID-free world, a COVID-free country, even with the latest outbreak, but the reality is globally that we do not, and we will continue to have that impact on us. And it will be a major topic, I think, of LTP, Sam, not trying to preempt anything, but our reaction to that. I guess also perhaps something, and we haven't got it on our agenda today, and it might be something we need to discuss. Conscious we've got Stephen in the room over there, is the increased cyber attacks, DDoS, I think it's described as, with NZX, and perhaps that's something that we need to pay some attention to. It might come through in Tim's report of risks in the future. It might be a work stream that we want to look at. We've also had the register of the new register of pecuniary interests, and I encourage everyone to make sure that they fill that out in a timely manner too. Craig, I'm sure you'll reiterate that, or whether there's a comment you'd like to make at the stage of where we're at with it. I just wondered if we get a bit of a prompt if we haven't done it.
Yeah, so most members, including community board members, have completed their disclosures. So I think it's just a couple left. I'll just send out a reminder to those councillors that haven't completed their disclosure yet. And then I'll provide a summary to David, who will go through with me.
Yeah, thanks. I'll get to questions in a minute, Deborah, if I can. Yeah, so just, I'm not asking for a name and shame, Craig, obviously, but it would be a little embarrassing if the members of this subcommittee hadn't done theirs, I would suggest. So maybe a wee quiet word in some ears might be useful. And there's also finally just a number of reports there and letters from the Office of the Auditor General too, which as always make good reading. So I'll move this as my verbal report for the month. Before I ask for a seconder, Deborah, you've got a comment or a question?
Just a query with regards to the conflict of interest registrar. If there's changes from what we've filled out, do we go and see Craig and update that? Because there'll always be changes. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you do. So, and you know, this is whilst we update it annually, it theoretically should be under constant review. I mean, as our personal circumstances change or our job circumstances might change. So it is the responsibility of elected members, having completed the details in the interest register, that you take personal responsibility for making sure that they are always accurate.
Thanks for that clarification, David. If there's no more queries on my report, I've moved. If I can get a seconder for that. Sam, all in favour? Against? Carried. David, we move on to page 14 to 28.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, not surprisingly, but traditionally, this is quite a thin agenda and a light meeting. And the reason for that, of course, is that we are in the middle of our annual report work. And that's the key focus for everybody at the moment. So no end of year financial reports, or should I say start of year financial reports for newcomers to the committee. The first 2 months we report collectively in the October meeting. A number of the items in my report I will add to the Chair's comments. So the first one was with respect to the correspondence from the Office of the Auditor General. First one in relation to extension of time, where you'll see at the bottom of page 14 a proposal to extend statutory reporting timeframes for council from 31st of August to 31st of December. We don't intend to take that time frame. In fact, Craig Moody, I'll just get to make some comments now, dovetails really into item 2, just the state of that audit and when you expect the report to come back to council, Craig.
Yes, so Audit New Zealand only arrived on site this week to complete the audit, so only really just started. So provided them with a pretty complete set of accounts. We're just waiting on the valuation of SciCon, which will be coming in this week. So by next week, we should be able to provide the councillors with a draft set of accounts. We'll just distribute that around via email, just to have a look through, and then it will be this committee meeting next month. We'll go through it together. So we aim to adopt the annual report on the same time frame as we planned, so the 14th of October. We don't think it will be delayed.
Thank you very much. So the other key message for members of the subcommittee is that the draft report will be brought back to this committee the week before and discussed, and we of course will have Gillian Tan in attendance at that meeting as well. But at this stage there are no issues that I need to share with you. Item number 3 on the report, Mr. Chair, I was delighted to see that the audit fees being increased by 7.5%, as you were 7.75%. more importantly, that the Controller and Auditor General considers this fee movement to be fair. I guess the question is do you see value out of the audit process? That's really the question that you will continue to ask yourself as we go through. It is a statutory process. There's quite a lot to it. Personally, I'm a disciple of the audit process, not surprisingly, given my financial background and the message that I give to the community, because I've always thought that a clean audit report is the greatest defence mechanism anybody can have against attacks from the community. But you might just want to ask the auditor when he's here at the next meeting around the processes and the perceived value and some of the added things to that. I just add some comments, Mr. Chair, in relation to another hat that I wear. I'm the chairman of the Canterbury Council's long-term planning working party, and we have regular meetings which are attended not only by all of the audit directors across Canterbury, but also by representatives of the Office of the Auditor General. Key things we're asking at the moment is around the ability of the auditors to sign off a clean audit report attached to the 21 through 31 draft long-term plan, given the unknowns around, in whichever order you look at them, COVID recovery, 3 waters, climate change, and obviously the latest one that's been thrown at us, which is the RMA reform. And probably would throw in there a couple of things around Canterbury 2050 strategy as well. So I've posed that question to OAG and Audit New Zealand at national level. Haven't had a response yet, but I know they're diligently given consideration to that. Craig has talked about the interest register, so I'll skip over that, but do want to talk about the Fraud and Corruption Awareness Survey. This is really good practice, Mr. Chair, and Craig has written this and is running the cutter on this particular survey. But for me, it's around 3 bullet points that he's got there. The first one, the levels of fraud and corruption awareness, and also the confidence that we have a process in place that people are prepared to use. The second one is the identification of organisational weak points. And it's one of those things when you ask a question like this, don't be afraid of an answer that you might get. And the third one is just the effectiveness of those policies and controls which are currently in place. So we are going through that. And I think the more important thing is the report back from that once that's completed. OAG bulletin is FYI stuff. And the Orion annual general meeting is probably written a wee bit in hindsight, and my chair did reflect on that in his presentation. The other comment he reflected on was around cyber attacks on NZX. Interestingly, in the last half hour, all CEs received an interesting email from the chair, the CEO of Solgum, suggesting that we might want to just reflect on what's happened to NZX and undertake a review of our own policies. So looking at Neil and Neil smiling back, and so that will be a report that we'll bring back on the agenda, Mr. Chair, for our next meeting. So that, brief as it is my report.
Could I just pass comment on that one? We have looked into our firewall situation, and our current Fortinet firewall, which protects all of our web servers, our council systems, has been checked against world standards, and it will withstand a denial of service attack up to around 3 million hits per microsecond. Currently, we're only hitting around 1.5, so we're pretty well safe, but we'll monitor that as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. That's reassuring, I guess. Is if these people become more sophisticated, I guess we would need to review that. But that's reassuring to know that that level of protection is there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Query on that, sorry.
Yeah, and Lisa.
Yeah, just a quick comment from me with regards to cyber security and that difference between an internal attack and penetration and an external attack and penetration. And you can have the best IT team in the world and the best systems and the best processes. But obviously, if we, sometimes we can be stupid people doing stupid things and we click on things. So I think a really worthwhile exercise to go through is to do a phishing exercise. Maybe be careful if we're going to do this, don't minute it. But that's a simple thing. Like I did this a year ago and it was a free coffee, $5 free coffee. And for an undisclosed entity, we had something like 70% of staff and some team clicked on this link. then they put in their details and they put in their password. They went all the way through for a free coffee. So I think to understand that exposure and our level of maturity is a really good first stepping stone, and then we can assess how much training and awareness we need to do. I mean, we may be pleasantly surprised that we're, I also did one with a bunch of accountants, and it wasn't around a free coffee, it was around click on this link and your systems will go faster and you'll be able to be more effective and efficient. And this whole group of chartered accountants all linked on it, my team, and it was very, very embarrassing. So, it's a great lesson to learn that just understanding that exposure first on our level of maturity, and then we can, and it's got to be regular, it's got to be continuous, as you guys will know quite rightly, is that messaging needs to come through, every month, because they're getting smarter and smarter, as with the phishing emails from, I used to get them, that come from the CEO to the CFO, and the email is, we had a case in the rebuild where CBD is as the actual main supplier of the convention centre. The email address was almost perfect. And what they'd done is they didn't ask for money, but they knew that payment of about $20 million was being paid on the 20th of the month. So 2 days before the 20th of the month, they put in an email for a bank change request to the accounts payable. But luckily, I thought that's a bit bizarre that I've got an email from the CFO asking for a bank change request. And it was a hack. And the money, $20 million would have gone if it hadn't have been for this account payable woman. Just thought, I might just pick up the phone. And so we put a policy in place that said anytime someone of our top 10 contractors requested a bank change, we actually picked up the phone to confirm, to say, just checking you guys have, so anyway. So the phishing exercise is very easy. You can get an independent to run the test for you.
In the council systems, we currently provide 2 phishing scam tests per year. All staff have to go and do that training. It's part of the process we work through on a yearly basis, and then we do one next 6 months after that. And all staff, same thing. You end up with getting a nice little sign that says you've either won a chocolate fish or something else, but it's actually a training module that all staff have to go through, and it has exactly the same examples of email that's been sort of changed in the background, but you won't see it unless you click on the links and identify 5 different areas of a suspicious email. So no, that training is provided.
Thanks, Neil. Much as I don't want to be trapped in that, perhaps selected members need to be subjected to that as well. Just mindful of Councillor McInnes had rightly asked the question before doing anything yesterday on one I think we all received, and that was a really good, it was good to see that, hey, this just didn't obviously, didn't look quite right, and obviously wasn't right. The response from the Chief Executive was the appropriate one, but that is the type of thing I guess we have to be all aware of, and kudos, Councillor McInnes, for, I hadn't read it at that stage, but it just looked fishy, and it was fishy. Sorry, I'm not sure who was next on there. Deborah?
Thank you. Look, just a query with regards to all of these firewalls on the cyber attack. Do we just rely on one agency, or do we rely on multiple agencies to actually manage our security?
It is set only through one agency. They have a multiple set of firewalls, so if one falls over, the other one will take over. But you do have to have a single point of failure. Out of every network, you can't have multiple paths. We have multiple streams out of this building, but ultimately they too do terminate at the same security company. To try to manage 2 security companies with firewall traffic is not a networking easily done. So we rely on them, but they have multiple failover systems if they do get hit.
Sam?
I guess just to reiterate, we are all susceptible, particularly elected members. All our emails are publicly available, more so than probably staff's emails are. And so including elected members, and the next time you do it would be good. And maybe some awards, could be given out. I know you said before we don't want to name and shame people, but David does give out 10, 20, 30-year service awards, and we could have those caught 15, 20 times through the phishing scam given out at the same time, just to, because at some point it's probably going to be all of us, you know, and I think that's the point. You know, you're saying people in your team, people that should know, we still get caught.
Absolutely.
Second question is just around Orion and our own appointment to Orion. I think we've probably got 12 months to work that through. So just wanting to make sure that Chief Executive's working on a process and that we understand the timeframes that we'll need to meet to ensure that our appointment to Orion was appointed and advised well before the AGM.
Thank you. So noted.
So is that, you're suggesting that would normally go through full council, Sam, not necessarily through here first, or are you thinking it should come through audit and risk as a recommendation?
Through here could be.
Yep. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Annalise, did you have a further question or you?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to remind members that part of your terms of reference does actually require you to provide advice to council on appointments to CCOs or trusts.
Okay, that is the report. We have a mover and a seconder to the acceptance of David's report. Sam and Shane, all in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Craig and yes, Douglas in the back there. Pages 29 to 42, major projects, financial and contract performance report. Please, you guys, you happy sitting there or do you want to come up the front, Craig? Yeah, might be best up the front. Let's do that. Thanks, gentlemen. Right, thank you, Murray. I note you're not, you know, front and centre on the report there, so you can hide in the back. Yeah. Craig, as per our conversation yesterday, it's yeah, I won't preempt your report, but obviously things look to be tracking well. So we look forward to hearing that and any questions that the committee have got. Thank you.
Yes, the skyline's changing slowly. We start off with the indoor courts facility. Work continues on the roof and the external framework and is on track for completion of this, the components by the end of August. I haven't checked it, but it should have been done now. And works commenced on the foundations of the management hub and external changing rooms. They're on target to be open early in the second quarter of next year, which is good. The construction is due to be completed by the end of March. Risks haven't changed. We still keep, they have diminished, if anything, because most of the risk is around supply of the COVID or supply of componentry, which has been held up by COVID, but we seem to be coping with that. So haven't had to update that, and we haven't had any subcontractors go into receivership because of COVID at the moment, but that is still as a potential long-term when the subsidy comes off. So we'll watch that space. Aquatic Centre, that's the actual construction is on, it's tracking currently 12 days behind, and that was all due to the water services, the pipe work around the pool, which was the welding of it or the gluing of it was less than satisfactory, and it took a while to sort that out. But the project milestones are expecting the new pool still to be operational in March. Refurbishing of the existing pool will be in the April to July period, and alterations are starting on the administration area and foyer and the completion of the family change rooms.
Just might add one piece of work we're just trying to figure out is how we do the temporary arrangements around that piece of work. We are looking to try and open a little bit earlier by about 2 months, but at the moment it's the dilemma between the cost of doing the portable portacoms to bring them on site versus how the program costs in terms of fees for various parties also work out towards the October period. So we've got a session on that. I think it's late next week. All the costs have been brought to, was it late this week? It might be. So that'll just be a wee bit of moving work. It's this dilemma between trying to get everything completed sooner, but that does have a cost to it, as opposed to the longer period, but the pool's not completed, if you can perhaps understand that simplistically. We've also just done some work under the main roof, just to look in the cavity there. So there's one or two issues regarding moisture, which we're just getting some further advice on at the moment. To some degree, probably not unexpected based on the issues we've had with fastings in the roof and just moisture in that area. But there's nothing, I think it's fair to say, nothing that is seen as of major concern, but just a bit more than you'd like to see. It's just how we treat that moisture that's in there.
Douglas, that the conversation around advancing a project, and I guess for want of a simplistic terms, the effect on revenue is really what you're looking at in advancing that. I guess is that a fair comment, or are you thinking there's other factors at play there?
I think we can pretty well, that the actual shutdowns where we have a loss of revenue, we've pretty well eliminated those now. It's more that the site is a construction site for longer. This thing we're just trying to balance up. Can we do it a bit quicker? But that does have a bit of a cost to it of bringing on a few more buildings. So that's what we're just trying to work through in our minds. And I think one thing, and obviously James Richmond's key to this, is trying to get everything pragmatically done before next winter. It just makes a better environment for customers and staff.
As I've noticed in the risks for the construction, maintenance and the unexpected, the costs there in my the construction maintenance, I'm using our Armitage Williams cash flow, and they've been pretty conservative. So I've yet to see whether they're actually going to spend all the money that we're actually projecting. I think they've been fairly cautious because it's unknown in a lot of areas when they start pulling bits of things to pieces. I don't think that the costs, from what I know of at the moment, I don't think the actuals will exceed those. So I'm projecting a fairly cautious figure.
And Elisa, did you have one on that particular project question?
No, I've got a few on multiple. So
okay, so I'll just wait to the end.
Yeah.
Yep. Rolleston Town Centre, the facade and the roof are progressing. Level 3 lockdown in Auckland has impacted the facade testing process, and the impact of that is yet to be confirmed. Works program has been impacted by COVID-19. The project team is looking at strategy to minimise any of the impact. So, but work is progressing nicely on that project, so I don't have any concerns with it at the present time. The roading infrastructure, the final signage installation on Tennyson Street is currently being carried out. That project is now complete. I'm just waiting for the final accounts to come in from Isaacs I'll report on it next month for the month of August, but I don't think we should be any need to report on after that. The COVID claim is progressing. That will be updated in public excluded by Douglas. The Rolleston Town Centre, the town square, that's just progressing with just fees, and the retail side of it's on hold as far as the production or any development goes. Recovery Park, that's going well. The asphalting, which is a big part of the stage 1, is been able to be carried out because we've had a run of really good weather. It's a significant milestone that they've achieved the whole of the asphalting to be done. Stage 1's on schedule to be completed by late August, and the actual canopy foundations are now complete, and they'll be starting construction of this very shortly. Lowe's Road, Tennyson Street, that's now all finished. There's just a few small items to be cleaned up, and it's all subject to whether something green infill for the new cycle lanes to be completed in the spring because of the temperature required. Lincoln Reservoir, it's a delay in the construction phase. It's because of a delay in the appointing the contractor to install enabling work in time for the peak water usage period over summer. We've employed the contractor early to help mitigate that, to actually do the construction. The solar drying hall, that's progressing all right. In the design period, those 80% has been signed off. Some minor items still to be checked. They have confirmed the equipment is going to be shipped in November and received in December. So that's all going well. Health Hub, you can look out the window and it's progressing very well. If it hadn't rained yesterday, we would have had the last concrete pour on the second floor finished. So steel's all been delivered. And the roofing will continue. So what have we got down here? Nothing much else. Installation of the electrical substation is progressing. So that should be enlivened as we speak. Just on Markham Way, there's very little to report on that. We're in the design phase at the present time. Sorry?
The design has been completed late last week, costed. Those are the numbers updated there, and work will commence late September with the footpath installation on the Markham residential boundary. So.
Yep.
Thanks, Craig. And Elisa, you've got some serious questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a good report. I think I keep beating on about the same drum, but around contingency and risk. So I guess cost. So I've got a couple of kind of probably granular questions, but I think maybe going forward, if we could for each project, I know that we've got a good summary table, which is great how we kind of start, gives that straight up picture of where we're at, like a snapshot of budget and cost. But for a couple of the projects, I get a little bit lost. So firstly, indoor courts, that's a nice, easy one. So that's an EOT claim of 50. So is that part of the 56?
The extension.
Or is that another 50? So I think we've got contingency. Oh no, so we've got. Oh no, the COVID 56 is the COVID. Contingency is the 82, and then in the risks we talk about.
Yes,
oh yeah, an EOT claim of 50. So is that 50 part of the 86, 82?
No, I think the 50 is really the COVID level 4.
Oh, so the 50 is part of the 56?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
so
a
just
fixed.
maybe we can get a little bit of clarity around, because
Sure.
I'm just getting a little bit lost when I think, okay, so we've got a contingency, but I'd expect that those risks to be linked to that contingency. It's not another bucket of, I
Okay.
guess, at-risk money. Do you get what I mean? So then I'm thinking, okay, so at-risk money, we've got 82, 56 and 50. Is that the true position on indoor courts?
I mean,
Yeah.
with regards to indoor courts, the key thing is the construction side's a fixed price.
Yeah.
So it won't move. The only issue really was the COVID issue.
Yeah.
There would have to be something exceptional. We've not had that. Civil and landscaping and the other items, again, theory should be fine as well. But you know, all our build projects, that's the one that, because it was done under design build arrangement.
Yeah, so yeah, that's great. And I guess it's just more the readability coming in fresh. I'm kind of, when I look at those three, I'm going, okay, is that 3 buckets of at-risk money, which is 82, 56 and 50? So there might be just a better way we can present that so that
Sure.
if it's not 3, if one of them's part of the 2, or if they are 3.
Yep.
So maybe just have a think about that, whether there's a crisper way of presenting that, because that's kind of an easy example, but then when I get to the aquatic centre, then I get really lost, because I'm looking at the unexpected maintenance. And again, I know we've got the difference between black font and red font being past tense and current tense, but again, at unexpected maintenance, I'm thinking, okay, so is this potential at-risk money of 512, 691, 912 and 785. That's me just reading it cold. So just maybe if we can just look at the readability as a fresh person coming in, I'm just getting a bit lost.
So with that particular project last month, when we were reporting, we identified a bit of confusion, and you're probably highlighting it here, that in February 2020, we'd gone through the maintenance issues as a separate issue.
Yeah.
And what we'd identified was that column there, line unexpected maintenance, and the need to lift the rate of the aquatic, the district target rate for aquatic services from 1 July 2021 to fund that.
Yeah.
So there's a far more in-depth table, which we just chose probably not to put into this report, but we should circulate and we can add, because it's
And
all
I mean,
been
I guess I don't
reported.
have the history, and that's probably what's making it a bit more difficult for me, but the report should be able to stand alone as a one-pager that gives you a real snapshot of where we're at.
Yeah, I
So
hear
yeah,
that.
maybe
But
just see
can
whether we can just make that a little bit crisper.
could I just make one more comment? Because I think what's missing is, this will provide this to you, is that history and commentary was in the council agenda from the 20th of February. Probably our issue is that we probably haven't highlighted that back, so we'll provide a bit more there.
Yeah, because I mean, the aquatic centre and even the town centre, I guess I want to know, what is the total at-risk money, whatever potted, whether it's risk related, contingency related, COVID related, what is the at-risk money and what actually does it relate to? So tell me, what is it? Because there's a few comments in here around where we've said, oh, there's a potential claim from the contractor for this, but then it doesn't actually tell me the next bit on what it actually is. And that's probably what I'm interested in, is what is actually that claim for.
Probably one of the unfortunate issues is that we've had workshops with the council on the conceptual side of how those costs run into the next stage.
Yeah.
And because we're under a redesign there of the town centre, so probably at least we just need to figure out how we bring you into that loop of information.
Yeah, I mean, good example is the town centre, the 826 and variations. So as a reader, cold reader, I'm going, what does that 826 actually relate to? Because it's quite a big number. So just a couple of lines on, doesn't have to be War and Peace, but just a couple of lines explaining what that 826 is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And the last thing, the Health Hub, health and safety had 3 near misses. What was the rating of those? Were they serious, not serious, significant?
I think they're all in the minor category, you would call them. So but we did have a bigger issue yesterday, in that in the wind, well, the crane on the boom on the crane parked in the front of the site swung into the road carriageway on Monday night. It was picked up by police, appropriately coned off, but it is something we're waiting for a report as to why that happened. Because that's probably the most significant risk on any of our sites that we've seen and need some answers on.
Great.
And just on this health and safety issue, Dan, the health and safety manager, is working on a report on critical risks for council, so that we can get some clarity about which are the ones that we all should lie awake worrying about and which are the ones that we just need to note need just improvement from parties to ensure they don't happen again. But and from a minor perspective, they all need improvement, of course. But
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Annalisa. I think it's highlighted perhaps part of the direction forward, and it's an evolving process, and you're absolutely showing the value of having you around the table by raising these questions. I think perhaps, and it's possibly remiss of me as Chair, Craig and Douglas, is how we get that link through for that information. That it's the old story, we sit here and we know what we know because we're sitting around the other meetings. Try to be cognizant of the fact, and Lisa, that you're not sitting at the same meetings as us, and how we get you up to speed with that is a very pertinent point. So yeah, thanks for raising that, and we'll have a conversation, I guess, about how we achieve that.
I think the reality is that balance has been raised a couple of times about how much information you put on audit and risk, and probably we need to put a bit more based on today's conversation. I mean, it's often easy to say, well, we've actually got too much, but some degree more is always better. So Craig and I'll just sit back and see how particularly we provide more on those contingency variation discussions. I think though the nature of the beast is that the questions you've asked mean that there's something missing, so we need to just address that.
Shane.
Tēnā korua, Douglas and Craig, thanks very much for your report. I guess being new to this position as well, I sit in the same boat as well, less experienced, of course, but getting up to date is something that I'll need to be a part of as well. But just to the report, page 33, under health and safety in the general, there's 3 points in there. I guess level 1 is obviously, that probably just needs to be level 2, but outcomes around some of the, incidents, 3rd of July there, the 3 incidents that have happened. There's no report on the outcomes or the mitigation or minimisation of those incidents. So maybe the report could reflect that. As I read the report, again, understanding the project status, obviously Murray's mentioned it where some of us have sat around the table. I'm new to the table, so it was the report, once I understood it and read through it a couple of times, it read better to me, but I think it could read better, and you'll have to guide me on that, but around some of the COVID risks, under the construction, there's no financial impact, and then under the risks ahead, which I understand there with the second paragraph down under construction, there's a high risk. So the high risks around supply chain and manufacturing and contractor insolvency. And I wonder, through communication with our contractors, how can we minimise that risk? And does it need to be just through progress payments or something like that to help them keep on track and not allow us to fall behind? I think that's all I had, guys, but I do appreciate the report, and I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm picking a lot of it up, but I'm appreciating everyone's comments as well. So thanks.
I think the COVID issue, we all thought lockdown 4, COVID, that was where the risks were, and we'd identified those, and we always knew there could be a few tail-on issues with supply chains. As we now appreciate that the lockdown in Auckland has created issues we wouldn't have thought were relevant to us, but they are relevant. So I think the challenge, we almost need to sort of talk about the March to May lockdown, and then talk about subsequent lockdowns and risks there. Just in general, we wouldn't be recommending paying contractors early to help them unless there was some incredibly good logic for that, and we had appropriate protection over the materials. That was an issue that early on became probably problematic for the government, which we certainly didn't go down, and we wouldn't want to go down either. So I think the best thing you can do for us is, if you're finding difficulty writing understanding reports, come and see Craig, myself, or Murray, and just highlight those paragraphs. They don't understand the wording because we read these day in, day out, but it's easy for us to see what the answer is. So yeah, just send us through or come and see us.
Thank you. I just had one more question around variation, and currently, do we benchmark, currently are we, or have we benchmarked variations through the total, during the total cost of the project? Do we benchmark variations on a particular sum as we go? They calculated at on the sum. I guess they calculate on the project as well. But how are we benchmarking that? And do we?
Generally, the variation or / the contingency would be the balance between what the project costs are when you accept the main construction tender and what's left, unless we're able to, we think, declare something surplus. So variations on these 4 projects range probably from, say, about 6% up to about 14%, depending on, where we see the risk. It's always good if you can release contingency or variation early for other projects. On all these, though, they're complex and we wouldn't do that. The other challenge, I suppose, is that the aquatic centre is the more difficult one, because you are in a building with a more challenging environment, and also we're getting into an existing building which can have issues with it, although it's only 7 years old. The other one that we've had problems with is Terrace Street, and some of the service identification hasn't been up to the standard that might have made it easier for us to actually know where our costs are. We've also had to make decisions about the areas called separate portion 2 and 3 to put services into this contract for them to be available for those 2 years contracts, knowing we still had some redesign elements. So we'd like to think we've managed all those risks, but proof will be in the pudding. We do our next stage of design over the next, say, 3 months for the town centre. So.
All right, that looks like the end of what I thought was a pretty clear report, and we ended up with quite a few questions, gentlemen. So that's good, though. We're getting direction. I think we'll end up with a clarity out of it for us, and and a direction, Craig, for yourself as to what we want. I think that may take a little time, but we're getting there. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the adoption? Bob and Nicole, all in favour? Against? Carried. And that brings us to the end, I believe, of the open part of the meeting. So I'll close that and I ask for mover, Nicole and Bob, the other way around this time, to go into PX. And we'll just await the cessation of the live stream. Stephen, if you can let us know when that happens, and we'll resume the PX portion. Thanks for your attendance, everyone who is now not required, I guess, for the next section.